My agency has run Facebook ad campaigns for more than 2,000 businesses over the past 9 years in every industry that you can think of. And because of that data and that experience, I know exactly which businesses find it really easy to get fantastic results with Facebook ads. In this video, I'm going to show you what those businesses are. I'll explain why it's so easy for them to crush it with Facebook ads. And if you stick around to the end, I'll explain which niche I would go into today if I had to start all over again. Okay, so the best niches for Facebook ads. Let's start by actually defining that. So the best niches for Facebook ads, in my opinion, are those where it is really easy to generate a lot of profit and high return on ad spend numbers. And there are certainly certain business types that find it much, much easier to generate high return on ad spend numbers than others. And that's what we're going to be focusing on in this video. So before I get into some specific examples, I want to start by talking about the main characteristic that all the businesses that find it really easy to get great results with Facebook ads have. They all have this one main characteristic, and that is high lifetime customer values. Okay, I cannot emphasize that point enough, that high customer lifetime values is absolutely key if you want incredible Facebook ad results, and honestly, to find it quite easy. Now, there are a number of different businesses that fall into that category, and they do so in different ways. And I want to break those down into subsections and go through those. But the main and early point to understand is that high average customer values is everything. So why is that so important? Well, if you think about how Facebook and Instagram advertising works, it's an auction system. All advertisers are competing against other advertisers, and we're all paying roughly the same amount to reach people. Now, we might have very different results, we might have very different return on ad spend numbers, but in terms of the cost per 1,000 impressions, if you want to advertise to the same demographic in the same location as another advertiser trying to advertise to the same demographic in the same location, you are more or less going to see the same cost. You're going to see the same CPMs, cost per 1,000 impressions. Now, if you take a business that generates, say, $30 per customer, and another business that generates $3,000 per customer, it's going to be so much easier for the business that generates $3,000 per customer to generate a profit and to acquire customers, to generate leads, to generate sales for a low enough price to make a healthy profit. If you 10x or 50x the value that you get from a customer, you very rarely have to 10x or 50x the cost to acquire that customer. So let's say you've got two businesses. One operates in an industry where the average customer value is $50. Another one operates in an industry where the average customer value is $500. The business that has customers that are worth $500 each will almost certainly not pay 10 times as much to acquire a customer as the business that has customers that's worth $50 each. They might have to pay 3 times or 4 times. So the larger the customer value, the more the differential is likely to be between your cost to acquire a customer and what that customer is actually worth, allowing you to see better return on ad spend numbers, better ROAS numbers, and also increased profitability. So we know that high customer lifetime values is really important. And within that, there are sort of 2 subsections that I like to break companies into in terms of how they achieve high lifetime customer values. And they're quite different and they advertise very differently, and it's worth going through each separately. The first is businesses that charge a lot of money. And by that, I don't mean businesses that are expensive for their niche, for their industry. I mean, they operate in a space where it is typical to charge a lot of money. So if you think a lot of businesses related to home services, for example, let's take roofers. The average customer, when they hire a roofer to either maybe do some repair work or put a whole new roof on their home, the average customer is going to be worth thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, depending, on the properties where they're working, that sort of thing. So they have high average customer values. If we take a car wash, for example, the average customer might be worth $15, $20, maybe less than that, depending if it's automated or done by hand, and if they buy anything else, etc., etc. So way lower average customer values just based on the industry in which they operate. The second subsection of businesses that achieve high customer lifetime values are those that get their customers to buy from them many, many, many times. Each individual transaction might be quite small, but they just get so many transactions from their customers that over their lifetime, the customers are worth a huge amount of money. If you think about grocery stores, supermarkets being a classic example, McDonald's is probably one of the most famous examples where they used it as part of their training for new staff members, that they wanted their staff to treat each customer like they were worth $50,000 over their lifetime, because that apparently is about the average of what a customer is worth. A McDonald's customer is worth to McDonald's is about $50,000 is what they'll spend over their lifetime. They're not obviously spending anywhere near that on each individual transaction, each time they come in, it might be, $20, might be 10, might be 30, depending on, how many people they come with, how much they order, but it's going to be a small amount, right? But the idea is they're coming again and again and again and again over their lifetime, and therefore they are worth a huge amount of money. So that's sort of the other category of business, the subsection of businesses that have high customer lifetime values. And in those scenarios, the lifetime becomes a lot more important. Whereas with those other types of business I mentioned, where it's typically a one-off fee, or most of the money that you collect from a customer is going to be within that initial transaction. Anything home services related being a good example. If you're buying a car, it would be similar. Most of the value that you get from a customer is when they actually buy the thing. Now, quick and important side note, both of those things I just talked about, they are changeable. A lot of business owners aren't aware of this, but often you can tweak your offer so that it targets a portion of your market where people do typically spend a lot more. You could decide to not offer the lower value things and focus on higher value. That would increase your customer lifetime value. And you can also find ways to get people to buy again from you more and more and more to increase your customer lifetime value that way. Improving your product or service so they want to buy, adding in subscription models, remarketing. There's all sorts of things that you can do there. And I just wanted to quickly mention that because a lot of business owners think, oh, well, I don't meet that criteria, therefore this won't work for me. Facebook ads can work for you anyway, but if you want to make it easy, you do want to work on this and increase your customer lifetime values. And you can, almost no matter what industry you're in, you can almost certainly improve your customer lifetime values from where they're currently at. And of course, there are businesses that combine the two subsections and are able to create monstrously high average customer lifetime value. So where companies where they get you to spend a lot of money with them each time you purchase, but you also then purchase again and again and again. A lot of the most valuable companies in the world manage this as part of the reason why they're the most valuable companies in the world. Think Apple, right? Every time you buy a new iPhone or a new laptop, like it's a lot of money, and you're probably not doing so once and then never doing so again, or not doing so again for another 10 years. You might be buying one of those every year or every couple of years. There's sort of extra products, you might buy headphones and all sorts of other things around it that are all relatively expensive. So Apple managed to get you to spend a lot of money each time they buy and buy again and again and again. That's why it's one of the most, if not the most valuable company in the world. Okay, so let's dig into those two a little bit more, because you're probably watching this video because you're trying to work out what to sell, or you're trying to work out if what you sell is going to be suitable for Facebook and Instagram ads, or perhaps be able to tweak what you sell to make it work. So let's get a bit more specific with some examples. So the easiest businesses to advertise with Facebook ads are local service businesses with, you guessed it, high customer lifetime value. So we've already talked about anything to do with home services is a great example. There are others, but that's a whole category, and there's lots of different types of businesses in there. If you think about, if you're going to remodel your home, if you're going to do a big renovation, that's going to cost tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how big your home is, right? That's a huge customer lifetime value. And one of the first businesses that actually started running Facebook ad campaigns for was an interior design company. And their average customer lifetime value was about £75,000, UK based, £75,000. Now, when each customer is worth £75,000, it's really difficult for that campaign to not be really profitable. Because if you think, okay, let's say that company's willing to spend 10% of what a customer is worth to acquire a customer, that means their acceptable cost to acquire a customer is £7,500. They were converting something, I believe, like 1 in 12. So that still gives you an acceptable maximum cost per lead of £600 plus. I think it's about £620, £625. So we were generating leads at the time for a tiny fraction of that, less than 10% of that. So it's just, you have so much wiggle room, and it is so easy to get those campaigns to be profitable and to achieve really high return on ad spend numbers, right? You might be able to generate a 100x return on ad spend, a 50x return on ad spend, even a 20x return on ad spend would be amazing for most businesses. Well, if each customer is worth 100 grand, it's a lot easier to do. Also, one of the best things about these types of businesses is that you are usually only advertising locally, because the service can only be delivered locally. And that means you're only competing against other local advertisers. And how difficult is it to create, say, the best Facebook ads in your town for landscaping services? High average customer values, large target market, but a local business. There's not going to be many other landscapers in your town advertising on Facebook and Instagram. The ones that are advertising on the platform, how good are their ads really? Probably not great. Spend an afternoon watching some of my videos and you will know how to create the best Facebook ads in that industry straight away. You'll be number one and you can dominate that local market. It's a lot easier to dominate that sort of market and have the best Facebook ads in that space than if you're trying to sell sports apparel and you're going up against Nike and, you know, like businesses that have enormous marketing budgets and hire great professionals and all that sort of stuff. It's a lot easier to operate within those local markets. Another big reason why it's so easy to get great ROAS with those is that the competition is either non-existent or very minimal. Now, it's not all plain sailing for these types of businesses. There are, of course, challenges, and that is that the deliverable is hard. Delivering these services requires a lot of moving parts, takes time, requires a lot of people, so it's quite difficult for these businesses to scale. It's not like an e-commerce business where if you sort of crack the code on your marketing, your advertising is working really well and you can just scale that because the deliverable is really quite easy, just more stock, more shipping, and that's it, right? Quite straightforward. It's much more difficult with these local service-based businesses to be able to do that. So what we often find, and we work with a lot of clients that have this type of business, and we love working with this type of client because we know we can get fantastic results for them, is that we know going into it that they're likely to turn their ads off at some point, and they're going to turn their ads off because they run out of capacity. We work with lots of businesses like this, and we know exactly what we're doing. We get them loads of leads, we fill them up, and they'll say, look, this has been amazing, but we're full. Can you turn our ads off for a couple of months, and then we'll revisit once we've got more capacity, because it is difficult to scale. So that is, whilst it's much easier to advertise and get a really high return on ad spend, that is the potential drawback, is that scalability, it's absolutely still possible, lots of businesses do it, but it does become more challenging in comparison to some other business models, and one that I'm going to talk about quite a bit in a minute. Now, it's much harder to advertise businesses that have a high customer lifetime value, which we want, but because of primarily repeat purchases as opposed to that one big transaction. And that's because firstly, the product or service or whatever you're offering, it has to be really, really good to get people to buy again. And a lot of business owners, even marketers, think that whatever it is they're advertising is fantastic. And sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's average, which, you know, the average is the average, remember, but sometimes it's not exceptional. And really the things that do well from a repeat purchase standpoint, getting people to stick around and use it again and again and again for a long time, and they often have to be exceptional. It can also be tricky from a cash flow standpoint, because if you have a high customer lifetime value because customers buy again and again and again, you might break even, maybe even make a loss on that initial transaction, and you're going to make that back and then more than make that back, but it's going to take time. So you might actually be running a cash deficit by acquiring customers advertising because you just don't get the cash back in from those customers for an extended period of time. So without funding, that can also be difficult. And on top of that, advertising those types of businesses is often hard from a competition standpoint. You need to be a much better advertiser because you're usually competing against other competitors that probably don't just operate locally, like with the previous subsection examples. They probably operate nationally or internationally. They're probably funded. They're probably really good at what they do. They have marketing experts involved, agencies, etc. So the bar in terms of quality of advertising to acquire customers is that much higher. So on the face of it, these businesses are a lot trickier to advertise, even though they do have higher customer lifetime values. And businesses that fall into this category are going to be things like software, media, consumable products. It's why, by the way, that all businesses that operate in those sorts of spaces, they've all been moving to subscription models over the last however long it's been, and every business seems to be trying to convert itself into a subscription model where possible. And this is why, because it increases lifetime customer value, which makes acquiring customers on the front end that much easier. You can afford to pay a lot more to do it. So you think about all the media you consume, it's all on a monthly subscription now. Even things like consumer, like the food you cook in your own home has been converted into a subscription business. Things like HelloFresh and Gusto, and I know there's different versions around the world, but I'm sure you can think of an example, right? So all these businesses are moving to that subscription model because they want the high lifetime customer value. And if the product's good enough, you can get really high customer values because people don't cancel their subscriptions. They keep buying again and again and again, and then that allows you to pay a lot more on the front end. So businesses in this subsection of those that have high customer lifetime values, they're harder to advertise, hard to get it right. But if you do, they can be insanely profitable. And that's why I wanted to include them within this video as the best niches for Facebook ads, because the ones that have the best possible results you can't believe, that are massively scalable, that have incredible ROAS, they often fit into this category. It's hard to win from a competing against your competitor standpoint. It's hard to do the deliverable and get that good enough to keep the customers around for long enough for that lifetime value to be high enough. But if you do, these are the ones that can see the best possible results with Facebook ads. Because if you think about, let's say you've created a software and it helps automate a task that people previously had to spend a lot of time doing. That's quite an easy thing to sell if it's a good SaaS offering. You might charge relatively low amount for that, $30, $40 a month, something along those lines for this software. Could be even less, right? So in that sort of scenario, you could be looking at a cost to acquire a customer of $20. That wouldn't be unrealistic. And provided that SaaS product is good and people stick with it, they might stick with it for years on average, which means your lifetime customer value at $30, $40 a month, whatever, ends up being in the thousands of dollars. So you could end up having a scenario where you're paying $20 to acquire a customer that's worth $1,500 on average. Now, yes, it takes time for that to come through, but those numbers are incredible. And that allows you to get incredibly aggressive on the front end with your ad campaigns and massively scale and spend a lot of money because you know you're going to so much more than make up for it on the back end. I mean, that example comes out at what? That's a 75x return on ad spend. And you can operate with that at scale. So that's, as I said, that's why I wanted to include these businesses, because if it can work well, these businesses can be insanely profitable and insanely successful when running Facebook and Instagram ads. Now, at the beginning of this video, I said that I would share what I would do today if I had to start all over again and I didn't have money, I didn't have the audiences I have, I didn't have the connections I have, I just had like the knowledge that I've got, the Facebook ads expertise and experience. Like, what would I do? Where would I, what niche would I go into? How would I approach this? Personally, I would go for the local service business that has a customer LTV of at least $5,000, and I'd hopefully like to get that significantly higher. And I would operate in that sector. And we've discussed in this video that there are challenges with it. But because the economics are so favorable and the competition when it comes to advertising is so easy to beat, if I was to operate in that industry and start a business, start a local service-based business, I would just never have to worry about acquiring customers. It would just always be really easy. And I think if you're in a business where you always can generate lots of customers at short notice, relatively easily, it's almost impossible to fail, firstly. And secondly, it's actually really difficult to not succeed massively over time. The challenge then, of course, if I was to go into that sort of business, would be to find a way to scale to many locations and hire teams and get great people to do the deliverable. That would become the challenge, because the customer acquisition based on my Facebook ads expertise would be very, very easy in that space. And I think if you can afford to acquire a lot of customers and you're able to acquire a lot of customers, you're always going to have revenue coming in that's going to allow you to hire good people to build out the back end. So that's what I do if I wanted the easiest possible way to get great results with Facebook and Instagram ads. It's not what we do. As an agency, we work with all different types of businesses, and I love that as well, because I think we get so many different looks, different types of businesses. We get to strategize, we get to be creative, and we get to work things out in different places. I think the people that work for me have become much better Facebook advertisers by having to work with lots of different types of businesses and learning lots of different ways of doing things, which is fantastic. And if you're interested in services, by the way, there is a link in the description. You can book in a free call and find out more about how we can get you better results and take the workload off your hand and all that sort of stuff. So I love that we have gone down that route, but I think there'll be a lot of people watching this who just want to know what's the quickest, easiest path to success if I was to start again, and that would be my answer. Now, no matter what niche you operate in or will be switching to based on the information that you found out about in this video, it is very, very important that you get your campaign structure right. And in this video, I share my new and updated recommended Facebook ad campaign structure. We found that with all the changes happening to Facebook and Instagram ads recently, we've had to change the way we do things from a structure standpoint, and I show you exactly what we're doing right now and what I recommend you do in this video here.